So in Who's Your City, I asked a question, a very simple question. What makes a great city? What makes a city that can attract people? And how does a city not only generate wealth, how does it make each and every one of us, our children and our grandchildren, happier? How does it affect not just our pocketbook, but our psychological well-being, our happiness, and our personal fulfillment? We partnered with the Gallup organization. We surveyed 30,000 Americans. In fact, our study showed that about a third of our happiness comes from our relationships, a third comes from the work and the challenges, and a third comes from our communities. Who's your city? It is an important decision in life to figure out who is your city. And you know it when you're in the wrong city and you don't feel like yourself, just like when you're in a bad relationship or a job you don't like, you get down and depressed. But when you get that thing right, you get elevated. We went further. I'll tell you what's the killer in city after city, community after community. It's that top-down, I know the way, I'm the leader kind of mentality. I asked Jane Jacobs this. I said, Jane, what makes a great city? She said, Richard, every city in its neighborhoods and communities have all kinds of community energy. It's coming up from the bottom. It can be harnessed. She said, beware of the squelchers. Beware of the squelchers. I bet you know who they are. That's not the way we do it here. No, we can't do that. That's too strange. Why would you do that? Why would you involve artists and culturally creative people? What do you mean talking to the gay and lesbian people? Don't even talk about them. Who said immigrants are important? You mean harnessing the creative potential of young African-American kids in a neighborhood? No. We have to go out and recruit companies and build stadiums. Sorry. That's the squelcher mentality. And what Jane said is, Richard, it is your obligation, and every one of us like that, to expose that mentality, to call it when we see it, to make sure we can overcome it, and to begin this change process. Now there's the two top levels of the pyramid. When we looked at what really matters to people, not just rich people, rich and poor and middle class, black and white and Hispanic and Asian, young and old alike, at the top of the pyramid of their happiness stood two factors: the open-minded attitudes of their community. Second from the top, a community that was open to all sorts of people. We asked, is your town a good place for racial minorities, religious minorities, ethnic minorities, new immigrants, artists, families, scientists? We went on and on and on and on. The communities that people reported were the most open and embracing had the highest levels of satisfaction and well-being. And at the top of the pyramid was the quality of the place itself. And this is a big challenge for all of our communities. Yes, part of it is arts and culture, and not just high arts, street-level arts, engaged participative arts, all kinds of street-level scenes. Historic preservation, Jane said it, new ideas require old buildings. New ideas require the old buildings to mobilize them. But not just that, the natural environment. The number one factor, here I am, Mr. Urbanism, standing here telling you the truth. And when I look at that waterfront, it gives me great joy. But this is absolutely critical. We're not just going to build cities on urban grit. No matter how much urban grit we have, and it's important, and it's critical, and using old buildings and historically preserving them and redeveloping them, they have to be integrated with the natural environment. People want clean water. They want green trees. They want a sustainable environment. All those things go together. Detroit has many assets. You know, about 15 years ago now, I go, and I hadn't written Rise of the Creative Class. I didn't even know what a creative economy was. I was asked to come to the city of Seattle. And I'll tell you, the second person who ever brought me to a town was Carol Coletta. So the next place I went after that was Memphis. But this was like my first visit to a town. I wasn't giving a speech. I was just going meeting with people. And they took me to downtown Seattle, and they said, Professor Florida, our city, now this was not now. This was 15 years ago. Our city is having a hard time. We have some things going on with Microsoft in the suburbs. This was before Amazon was even started, and the whole thing happened. But downtown is a hole in the donut. What can we do to rebuild our downtown? And they took me to this neighborhood, lots of homeless people, lots of dilapidated buildings, abandoned spaces. They showed me a little coffee shop. I'm thinking it must have been an early Starbucks. I really do. It was a little coffee shop before we even knew what Starbucks was. And they showed me a bookstore, and the coffee shop and the bookstore. And what can we make here? You know, can the coffee shop and the bookstore? And I'm thinking, oh, God, what can I tell them? Coffee shop and the bookstore. Well, out of the corner of my eye, I see this big new construction project. So I'm looking off in the distance, and there's this metal and wood, and it's all curvy and strange. I'm like, what's that? Trying to figure out a way out of this dilemma of having to give an answer. What's that thing over there? And they said, well, that's a new building. Now, we all know who the architect is now, but I had no, it was being built by Frank Gehry. So it's Frank Gehry, and they're telling me he's this great architect, he's emerged on the scene, he has this new way of doing things. Well, I'm like, well, what is it? Why? They said, oh, that's what Paul Allen is doing for our city. So I'm thinking, Paul Allen, guy has 2 first names. Who's Paul Allen? They said, oh, he's the guy who co-founded Microsoft with Bill Gates. So I'm thinking, oh, yeah, the guy's got billions, right? He's worth 30, 40, 50 billion. He's got a lot of money to do stuff like this. So I'm trying to figure out what it is. I'm looking at this construction project. It looks strange enough. I'm trying to figure out what the heck this thing is. So the first thing that runs through my mind, and I say, so is it the Seattle Science Center? They're like, no, nothing to do with science. So it's your entrepreneurship, robber baron, capitalism, how to get rich center, right? No entrepreneur, robber baron, capitalism, how to get rich. I'm figuring Paul Allen, was rich. That's what he wanted to teach kids. You guys know what it is, right? At least one of you I saw in here knows what it is. The G? EMP, the Experience, the Jimi Hendrix Experience Music Project. Hold on, now think about that. And this is why what we're doing is so important. This is why the creative economy includes all of us. This is why the artists and the entertainer and the designers go together with the scientists and the biotech people and everyone together. This is why Detroit is in the same basket with the 2 great university-led metros right at your doorstep, Lansing and Ann Arbor. 2 of the great educational powerhouses together, probably the greatest single research university in the world. This is why it all comes together. Creativity begets creativity. You see, it wasn't Einstein. It wasn't Edison. It wasn't a Mellon or a Carnegie or a Rockefeller that motivated Paul Allen, arguably the greatest computer developer of our time. Who was it? A young African-American kid named Jimi Hendrix who grew up in Seattle. And he went off and he fought in the 101st Airborne, and he came back and he wanted, in his words, he wanted to create a modern blues. Think about that. He wanted to create a modern blues, so he studied that guitar. He reinvented that guitar. He listened to his blues, his Muddy Waters and his Howlin' Wolf, and he went back and he played with the Isley Brothers on the Chitlin circuit. And he played with Little Richard, and he went to Nashville and he learned his country music. Then he went to England. He studied the Beatles. He came back to New York. He learned about Bob Dylan, and he covered his tunes. He heard Coltrane and Miles. He brought jazz into the mix, and he changed the way we heard music. Not only that, he was a technological innovator. He took those amplifiers and he added new tubes. He took those pedals and he created, and he worked with people to create new pedals, new speaker systems, new echoes, new reverb. He changed the way we heard music, and when he got a little money, he created his own bootstrap garage startup, his own studio. He took every single penny. He plowed it into that studio, Electric Ladyland, where he made the music. See, I was a guitar player. My boyhood idol was Jimi Hendrix. That doesn't matter. But that's what Paul Allen wanted to be. He wanted to be his own version, his computer version, his software version, not of Einstein or Edison, but of Jimi Hendrix, a young African-American kid who died at 27. That's the kind of legacy we have to resurrect. That's the kind of diversity we have to achieve. And that's the kind of truly creative society we have to spur by harnessing and encouraging the creativity of all. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to working with you in this day and as time goes on.